Okay. Um, Thanks, Brian. Thanks for covering me before I did something stupid. Um, so before anybody questions me on my choice of title, yes, it is a slogan for a 1955's advertisement in the UK for biscuits called Wagon Wheels. Look it up. It's a fact. So so don't get any naughty ideas. I picked it because I'm sure a lot of people get the horribly bizarre innuendo for cookies. Like, hey, you know, we've got Oreo style cookies. What kind of slogan should we do? And that's the best they could think up, or that's the one they're like, yes, put that in print, please. Print. But I have crazier ones, and I have weirder ones. So yeah, you guys will be seeing those. Also, sorry it's extremely late for my European. I was going to say European fans, but European viewers, if you watch live, and to my United States American allies. Also, it can be kind of late. Mm, hang on. Okay, there we go. Fuck. But that's the fun of it, though, Stan. It's cool. It's hilarious. Yeah, it's 9. It's evening for me. But it's cool, Stan. There's some crazy ones. Like if the I think it's if oh god, how does it go? Cuz I have a slogan, like an old times or like a advertisement book that shows like the the insane fucking changes that advertisements have gone throughout the decades. One of them was it's also from the 50s. It was before I remembered the wagon wheels one. It was going to be this one. Uh oh god, how did it go? I think it's if the name's on the door, the Bigelow's on the floor. And it's for a company that sells Bigelow, and I forget what the product is supposed to be. Fuck. Hang on. I'll just open up my book. Where's my book? There it is. Uh, oh, almost burnt my book. Uh, ah, a name on the door means a Bigelow on the floor, and it's for carpets. Bigelow carpets. Wrigley's Double Mint Chewing Gum from 1959. Double your pleasure, double your fun. uh, Industrial Rayon's Underwear, 1955 in the United States. It's the knit with the fit where you sit. Hang on. Oxo gives a meal man. No. Oxo gives a meal men appeal. Oxo stock cubes, 1957 for the UK. Oh. Where's? There's one for. I'm trying to find it now. It's for the fucking. It's for cars. Uh, no, no. Uh, fuck. I can't find it again. There is one here that I just found for maternity wear by New Life. Figure protecting while you're expecting. Just shows you how insane the 50s were. Hey Dan. Exactly. The slogans are weird. They really are. Exactly. People like they had so many it's a video a TV advertisement with John Wayne for Camel cigarettes. And I've always brought this up as one of the most insanely sexist uh advertisements I've ever seen. He's at a club, and you could probably look at it's probably on YouTube still. But he's sitting in a club and with a bunch of guys, like a bunch of his male friends and some chicks. And one of the chicks reaches over and goes, "Can I have a cigarette?" And she reaches over and tries to grab John Wayne's pack, and he's like, "Not for you. These are men's cigarettes, Camels." And then he looks like, if I remember correctly, he looks right at the screen and he's like, "Camel cigarettes are only for men." Like, only real men smoke Camel cigarettes. And he did a few, if I remember correctly, he did a few ads for him. Exactly. They also wanted to make a rhyme because that was something in the 50s. But yeah. So I wanted to talk about because I just finished watching as many of the retrospective videos as I possibly could on this topic. Channel awesome controversy. There are so many things that I did not need to know about a lot of like contributors. I don't even know why they're called contributors. I don't like a lot of them had you like maybe when Channel Awesome started, they you could call them contributors. But for the majority of the times that I watched them, they didn't really contribute. It was just another platform to spread their product or content. So like uh Spoonie had it's on his Spoonie One account here on YouTube. I think it's been ages since I've watched it, but his SWAT 4 playthrough, which is a classic. Um his Ultima retrospective, which was pretty damn good. That's on YouTube. I remember watching it on YouTube. No, I watched it on the Spoonie Experiment, his website. I didn't go to Channel Awesome to watch Linkara or Spoonie. I watched them on their own respected websites or on YouTube. Like I watch Linkara now on YouTube because he uploads on YouTube on the same day, if not a day after he uploads it to his website, which makes it a lot easier because I can just add it to my watch later list and I don't have to go sifting around looking for it. Especially now that I have a smartphone and when I'm on a walk or something, I can just plug in my headphones and listen to my playthrough or my playlist. But yeah, a lot of shit I did not need to know, and a lot of shit I never knew happened. Um, like uh, some of the stuff I can get, like Spoonie and Spoonie's attitude, his bipolar, Nate tendencies, him lashing out at his fans, shitting on his fans, mistreating his audience. That shit I know about, and it makes me sad. Like I was talking to Dan and Sten last night about it on Skype. I think it was last night, where I was like, "Man, I remember like 2009, 2010, laughing my ass off watching fucking SWAT 4 and like Spoonie doing his Rebuary uh series. Also the Ultima stuff, him taught his Counter Monkey stuff where he talked about Dungeons and Dragons stuff was really awesome. And it was fun times all around. And then just out of nowhere, I found out, and I didn't even watch the anniversary movies. Like the anniversary movies on Channel Awesome, I just had no interest in because 95% of the cast were people I did not watch. Like, I've watched a few of Nostalgia Chick's videos here and there while I was watching Nostalgia Critic on his website. But like, I'm not really a big fan of Nostalgia Critic. I've watched a few things of him here and there. Yep, the Highlander review videos, they were good. But like, I don't know, like I've never really gotten the appeal for the nostalgia critic, especially after he quote unquote came back from the dead. Like it's like Family Guy, if that makes sense. Like I enjoyed Family Guy for a stint in my teenage years. Like it was funny. I had some good laughs with certain skits and certain aspects of the storylines and stuff in the episodes. Now it's just meh. It's kind of just beneath me. Um, well, God, with Nostalgia Critic, it's like that but amped up to 11. Where like there were like in some episodes of Family Guy, you'd get a pretty long skit where they have the punchline and you're like, get over, like get on with it. Like, what's the fucking punchline? What is the what is the point of making this skit? Like, how does it coincide with what's going on in the show's storyline? But with Nostalgia Critic, there's like 3 4 minute long, sometimes 5 minute long fucking skits, and they stretch this fucking review out from like what could be a 15 20 minute review to like a 30 35 minute review because a large chunk is, skit. It's also one of my problems with Linkara's videos for the most part, in which he has either at the beginning or at the end or both, he will have a storyline. And I was watching the storyline here and there. Like he had a Silent Hill motif storyline at one point where oh my god, his gun was he has a magical gun. For people who don't know Linkara's like lore, and and I'm not real well versed in said lore, surprisingly, but Linkara has a magical flintlock pistol, and in one of the storyline arcs, there was a either a time traveling or an interdimensional hopping gunslinger who had collected multiple iterations of said gun or multiple guns who had the same abilities. And there was Lord V or Lord Z or something like that. Pretty much picture Lord Zed from fucking Power Rangers, but with green armor on, like Master Chief, with wires hanging out of him. And he was like this interdimensional, intergalactic threat that wanted, I think, Linkara's gun for some fucking reason. He was like the main antagonist, and there were like all kinds of things. Well, it's not just some kind of magic, Dan, because apparently in the I call it the Silent Hill arc because Linkara was reading Silent Hill stuff and like horror stuff. Apparently, the gun is possessed by a dead girl, if I remember correctly, and so it has like its own consciousness or something. I don't fucking know, but like it became so convoluted and so overly complicated that I would have to watch the entirety of the whole like I'm surprised, there probably is, but I'm surprised that I have not come across, like, an entire storyline of Linkara that's been edited out of each video and superimposed into, like, a massive movie, so you can watch from beginning to end of the storyline leading up to his movie. But, yeah, like, after a while, I was just like, "I am totally disinterested, and I am totally out of the loop with this," and so I would skip if there was an intro storyline segment, I would skip it, and then I'd watch the episode. Sometimes he would have little things happening within the review coinciding with what was happening in the grander story of that episode. Like he'd hear something, or the lights would flicker, or like something would happen. I think one time, like his gun disappeared when he tried to use it, or something like that, or like, uh, oh god, I forgot Linkara's ninja persona slash character, but like he didn't appear or something like that in one skit where he referenced him and he was just gone. Really weird. But like that was something that just drew my ire after a certain point. But yeah, like at least it wasn't as blatantly bad as what Nostalgia Critic does. And the other thing I don't like, and I've watched a few of his reviews after he came back, was him doing full on, let's just shoot what was in the movie. We can't show footage from the movie, so we'll have Tanya and Malcolm and my brother Rob and the other dude that reminds me of somebody who would be on TMZ. Let's have all four of them plus me dress up as the characters because we got to spend money to emulate what's going on in these movie scenes. Let's film shot for shot what happens that we're gonna pick at or we're gonna talk about. And it's like, just stop. Just stop. Don't do reviews of movies that just came out. You are the nostalgia critic. Just do fucking movies from days gone by. Do that. The sheer amount of fucking movies that have gone come and went, or came and went, like it's untold. It is untold how many movies there are between like 1980 and 1990. The amount of fucking like just schlocky movies that got like theatrical runs that were just awful or bombed. Just talk about those, please. Please, can you just do that, Nostalgia Critic? But like, where to begin? Like, where to fully begin with like the shit that has blown up? Um, so, hmm. So what's happened for the people who've been living under rocks and haven't watched or read anything preceding my video? Um, Obscurus Lupa and a few other creators who were associated with Channel Awesome have come out and revealed an expose as to the horrible shit that they were put through and the horrible shit and how they were and the horrible shit they were treated like while working for Channel Awesome. Some big name things include one of the contributors slash creators being duct taped to a wall and being hung there for so long she passed out on set. Um, Iron Liz fucked up her knee during one of the stunts of Suburban Nights. Also on that movie, uh, Orlando. I forget who Orlando was, but he fell and landed on his neck, quote unquote, wrong. Uh, Iron Liz was uh, being told to sign a contract to show that to agree that Channel Awesome was not liable for the accident on set, and she refused to. I'm not sure if she did sign the contract or not. I hope not. Um, During Kickassia, the act if I think it's Kickassia, the actors were stuck in a attic when they weren't shooting with no food or water and no air conditioning. The ti Jen, the title is a biscuits slogan from 1955 or 1956 for biscuits in the UK. Picture Oreos. That's what wagon wheels are, and that was their slogan for those cookies. Um, but other things includes Nostalgia Critic having to shoot a scene with quote unquote Mecha Linkara. That was another character for Linkara's series. Apparently alluding to Mecha Kara raping Nostalgia Chick and turning her into six of nine, which Linkara and Nostalgic Chick refused to do, and so they were talked down from instead of showing us, like, I guess, doing a scene of the fight, they just had, uh, I think it was Rob or Doug or both just told, Nostalgia Chick to, quote, unquote, s make sounds as if she was being assaulted, and they just did those sounds instead of outright showing the scene. Um the fact that you would be fired or let go if or reprimanded for showing your Patreon link or telling people to go to your Patreon or put the link in your description on Channel Awesome. Uh, if you were obligate you I forget if it was actually in the contract or they had to sign the contract to be in the anniversary, but if you did the anniversary, you were obligated to do crossovers with other big name contributors to cover the costs of the movie, the budget. So, like, for instance, because I got Dan and Sten and Jen in here, like if I was the director and like the creator of this website, and I was like, we're gonna make a crossover, and all three of you are gonna be in it, but you got to do crossovers with me because I'm making the most money. So that way, when you guys do your videos where I'm like a cameo crossover appearance for like 5 minutes of your 30-minute review, a chunk of your ad revenue goes to me for compensation for paying the costs of this movie that we're going to have this big massive crossover. Um, Other things include uh, backers of said movies did not get their DVDs. Some of the actual contributors didn't get DVDs. Uh, some of them weren't even allowed to have commentary tracks. Some of them were allowed to make their own commentary tracks, and they didn't get as many views as something other like a group of them doing it. Uh, the fact that the Nostalgia Critic did not tell the rest of the contributors that he was killing off the Nostalgia Critic, which was essentially the biggest thing that was bringing in the revenue to the site. Um, some of them knew, but that was only because he had talked to them previously, or if you read the script. And some of them only were given, if I remember correctly, scripts with their lines only and the certain sections that they would be in. So if you weren't in the full movie and you weren't there to witness the Nostalgia Critic being killed off into Boldly Flee, you were not informed that, hey, the Nostalgia Critic's dying and he's not going to, and like Doug Walker is the Nostalgia Critic's real name. Doug's just going to branch off to other things. There's the $90,000 plus Indiegogo that Channel Awesome did to do a new show, and it was a poorly budgeted game show hosted by Cinema Snob, and Cinema Snob does not look like he wants to be there, and it's awful. It you would if you watched the game show, which is what they did with the $90,000 supposedly. The game show looks like it's on on a hairstring or yeah, a hairstring budget of like $1,000. It's got a horrible stage. Like I think it's the very first episode. You have two guys battling it out with the magnet fish game where you have a fishing pole with a little magnet and the fish mouths open up on the board and it's spinning around and you have to try and catch as many fish as you can. And that's like the first like that's the first challenge in this game show in the pilot. And poor fucking Brad Jones, he is trying to do commentary and he just does not look happy. Like you can see it in his eyes. He's like, "Please kill me. I'm in hell. This is my hell. I will change my ways." But yeah, like there's a lot of horrible shit that's apparently gone down. And some of the shit I already knew about uh back in the day because of The Amazing Atheist. He was part of Channel Awesome as the irate. I think it was the irate. No, it's the irate gamer is who I'm thinking of. Oh God, I forget the name of his critic persona, but he was a critic and he would critique things. And so he applied to be part of Channel Awesome. They saw the potential of having him on the site as a boon, so they had him on. And he did a couple videos on that guy with the glasses, which I watched because he didn't upload them onto YouTube, and they canned him. And if I remember correctly, TJ's explanation as to why they canned him was because of his refusal to do crossovers with other creators. He refused to be in the anniversary movie that was coming up, and I believe it was some of the content or his opinions did not mesh well with the site's overall opinions, and so he was just let go. I think with very little notice, and that was it. And so he did an expose where he talked about his experience with that guy with the glasses, and from that point on, it kind of painted him in a bad light for me because I was like, well, that would probably explain why a lot of things are are the way they are. And then with Spoonie being canned, with the whole Obscurus Lupa blowout on Twitter, and then him leaving to for greener pastures. Yep, some of the content he wanted to make was also another reason. It was just insane. There were so many things that just made me go, no, I'm not liking Channel Awesome, and I'm liking it less and less. Which was why I was glad that I could watch Linkara on his website instead of Channel Awesome because I didn't want to give him the ad revenue. And so a lot of this shit has been stated, but it's been dredged back up after a few years. A lot of things that I did not need to know about were brought up in several retrospectives that I watched. Like certain things about the nostalgia chick that I did not need to know about. Lankara's sexual preferences, which I did not need to know about. Those will never be those will never be removed from the deepest, darkest corners of my mind. No amount of bleach will be able to cleanse my soul of some of the horrible, disgusting, kind of icky things I needed to hear about. But the majority of what I've grasped for the Channel Awesome shitstorm that is going on is this: all of them have massive egos. I will repeat that. All of them have massive egos, and they all form cliques. Even the nicest of them form cliques. Linkara, I have had multiple people who I watched talk about meeting Linkara, and they're like, he's a really nice guy. He's kind. He's very soft spoken. But then there's a lot of them who also say he can be an asshole and he can be like Gollum in the sense that he'll put on a facade of being a nice guy, but if you do something that he doesn't approve of, he will he will be irked and he will just either shun you or he will rat you out to other people that will make them not like you, or he will just tell people why he doesn't like you. Um, Doug Walker and his brother, I've always seen them both as like the biggest overly inflated egos of the site. Not really surprised by that. Like they always feel like they're superior to everyone. I find it very appealing and lulzy to know that the two people, well, the major person, the nostalgia critic, a person who criticizes bad movies for, I would say, Dan, it's more like a like a sheer level of irony. Like the nostalgia critic reviews bad movies, and he literally analyzes like how shots are just awful, how dialogue is stilted and wooden, how the budget looks is just atrocious. All of these things, picking at awful movies for why they're awful, and he himself has made nothing but awful content. Like Kickassia is just awful. Fucking To Boldly Flee is just awful. Like there's just like he apparently had to borrow Todd in the Shadows' camera for Suburban Nights because Nostalgia Chick was part of the second crew for filming, and if I remember correctly, she got fed up. She got fed up with having to use Doug's camera and have to wait until he was finished shooting his scenes. And so she was like, "We need a second camera. We need a second camera so that we can film simultaneously, doing two separate scenes. One where the nostalgia chick and all these characters aren't needed, and so we can do everything in a reasonable amount of time." And Doug finally relented and was like, "Fine, uh, well, well, I'm not paying for another camera, so you'll have to find one." And thankfully, believe it was Ton in the Shadows was happy enough to just be like, "Yeah, you can borrow mine." And she used, I think, one of her SD cards because it was the same model as Doug's, and they filmed. Like the man does not even own a second camera for doing these big budget, uh, very long, very time consuming productions. Like, what happens if you were shooting like shooting a scene and you drop the camera, Doug? How are you going to film the rest of your movie? On hopes and dreams? No, you usually have a backup camera. You usually have multiple cameras in case something happens. Maybe one of the lenses cracks. Maybe you have two. Maybe you have three teams, director teams. Like there's so many things wrong with this. Like he expected the crew and the actors to pay for their own food and drink and room and board because it wasn't in the budget. So like when went out to shoot something, you had to bring your own food and drink. Like Doug wasn't going to be like, "Hey, I have like waters in a cooler and I have some sandwiches I made, so like if you guys are hungry." Or he wouldn't get like a caterer or something when they were shooting like for like I don't know, an 8-hour day or some shit. I don't know how long they shot certain scenes or how long they shot on in a day. But like if I was shooting a film and I had like for just shits and giggles, I was given $90,000 to make a movie. I don't know why you'd give me $90,000 to make a movie. Like I don't like I could you know what? I could probably make a more cohesive narrative in a half-hour film with like $10,000. With $10,000, I would be set to make like a nice 30, maybe 45-minute. We might even stretch it to an hour, depending on what I have to do for scenes. So we'll say a half hour to an hour long movie with $10,000 budget. I could probably do a lot with that. And if I had like 12 actors, like I'm not going to need that many if I'm doing like a horror, like a short horror movie. Like if I had 12 actors with a $10,000 budget, you goddamn right I'd be like, "Hey, I'm going to go get some Subway for you guys." or you guys want to come with me to go get something to eat, I take them out to Subway, or I take them out to, like, I don't know, Olive Garden, or or get some Domino's, or get something for them to eat and be like, "What do you guys feel like eating today? You want some Chinese food? Do you want some fucking you want some Italian food, Portuguese, like, food's on me. You guys are like, I'm paying you guys, but, like, I also got to feed you guys and I got to give you guys somewhere to stay." Like, you gotta do that. You are the director, you're the producer, you have to manage these folk. Like, when an actor in Hollywood goes to do a shoot, to do a film, they are fed, they are given a trailer with commodities. Exactly, group discounts at some places. Like, Christ, like Domino's. I'm not sponsored by Domino's, even though I love Domino's, but, like, Domino's has sales, online sales. You could get, like, I think if you get you can get like 5 to 10 pizzas for half the price of a normal pizza. Like, I buy 10 pizzas and I have 12 people. I'd be like, okay, well, say one person wants the most atrocious, disgusting, fucking god awful creation of pizza, which is pineapple and ham. We'll say one of those actors wants this unholy abomination. I can buy him that. And that leaves me 9 other pizzas for the ungodly folk that don't want that monstrosity. They don't want it anywhere near them. Say one of those say one of those pure Christian folk were like, "Oh, I'll take pepperoni, please," and nobody else wants pepperoni. I'll be like, "Okay, well, you have your own pizza." And say everybody else is like, "Oh, we'll go for anything." I now have 8 pizzas that I can make half, like, half sausage, half mushroom. I'd be like, "Does anybody want 2 toppings on one?" And if someone's like, "Yeah, I'll take you know what? Just get half." Because you wanna know something? People aren't greedy. People aren't greedy. They're gonna be fine with it. They'd be like, people are humble for the most part. So I'm sure one of the actors would be like, I'll take pepperoni and mushroom. Just make it half, please. Just in case." I'd be like, "No problem. I got you, fam. I got you, spam. I got you, fam." And I do that. But apparently, no. Fuck Little Caesars. Fuck Little Caesars Pizza. They make their pizza at the crack of dawn in a microwave because it's frozen pizza, and it sits out all day. That's why it's $5 pizza. I will gladly pay 7.50 from Domino's to get better quality knowing that it's baked in an oven before they deliver it. Because there's a Little Caesars right next to the grocery store I go to, and there's a lot of pizza that comes out of there, and it's a lot of stuff that's just, ugh, ugh, no thanks. Ugh. Go for a JonTron. Eh. So, yeah, like, these are things. These are common sense things that a director slash producer should know, and apparently, Nostalgia Critic, aka Doug Walker, had no idea how to do. Really bad, really bad on his part. Another thing, that apparently came out. Whenever Doug was shooting a film, he would always tell the cast to act more like him, aka act more like the Nostalgia Critic. And when they would state that their persona, like Spoonie's persona on screen as the Spoonie one, or Linkara's, or Nostalgia Critics, or Obscurus Lupa, or like whoever the creator was that he was talking to for that scene, if they said that's not how my character would act, like like Spoonie as the Spoonie one, his persona from, like, the early run, he wasn't this slapstick stupid caricature. That's the best I can describe Nostalgia Critic. He wasn't this slapstick caricature. He didn't run around and have all these weird, bizarre skits. Most of his skits, he was the straight man. Like one that I can think of right now is his Final Fantasy X review, where Titus comes in and starts ranting and raving about how he's fighting the good fight and whatnot, and Spoonie's like, "No, no, you're an idiot." Like it was when he became the Avatar where he started becoming more nonsensical, but that was to you know match with the nonsensical nature of a lot of the things in Ultima. So like if Spoonie was like, that's not how Spoonie would act, or that's not how Doctor Insano would act, Doug would then state, well, how about we do two takes? One with with you how you would portray the character, and one with you portraying my character, but in your name. And Doug would keep his version. Doug would keep his version of the take, and he'd put it into the movie. Yeah, deadpan comedy. That's Spoonie. Spoonie's more sarcastic deadpan comedy with black humor. But yeah, shit like that. Like he was forcing the actors to not act the way he wanted, which is kind of very George Lucas. Like George Lucas is not an actor is not an actor's director. If I'm remembering the quote correctly, George Lucas is not an actor's director. He has a God, to quote Lord of the Rings, and I'm quoting Treebeard of all people. George Lucas's mind was like metal, gears and metal. He had a set thing that he wanted to do. So if he had Anakin, like, and you could see this in the behind the scenes stuff with George Lucas, which is amazing. Um, he'd be like, "Well, I want you to go to the window, as Anakin, and be like, I am for the Republic, and I want you to turn around like this and walk." And so you can see like a lot of the actors going, "Well, wouldn't my character act more like this?" And George would fight him on it. And since he's the one paying them, and they don't want like trouble, they have to kind of concede to a certain thing. It's why episode five's great, because Irvin Kershner isn't George Lucas. And apparently George has always been like this, as you can see by Princess Leia having a British accent for a small section of the movie, and then completely losing it because George was just going going as he goes. Just you know, George is kind of weird like that, which is kind of what the Nostalgia Critic does, aka Doug Walker. Uh, it was just bad, just real bad. And so there's been this whole expose about the Nostalgia Critic and Channel Awesome and all that, and the horrible treatment that creators were subjected to. Bennett the Sage also got injured during a stunt on Suburban Nights. I think the dude Orlando who got his neck hurt is in the bloopers still. Like his actual injury, surprised nobody snapped. Like I'm surprised he didn't like snap his fucking neck or something. Like because landed on his neck, quote unquote, wrong. That's bad. But Christ, it was quite a while when this controversy opened up that Channel Awesome finally posted something in response, and it's the most blatantly generic "I'm sorry" kind of response you could possibly get. They don't like they say they did wrong, but they're gonna try and change. But they said that last time like controversy like this happened, they claimed that they were sorry and they were going to try and change it. Shit still happened. Honestly, Dan, if you want some feels and you want to feel real bad, uh is it Jake Lloyd? I think that's the kid who played Anakin in episode 1. The behind the scenes documentary makes me feel incredibly depressed and sad for Jake Lloyd because you can actually see George Lucas bitching at him over the pronunciation of Coruscant, because in the original script and in some of the shooting and in some of the footage they were pronouncing it Coruscant, which is how George wanted it pronounced. And so when George completely changed his mind. It was like, I don't want it Coruscant now. I want it Coruscant. Like fucking Jake Lloyd was not really understanding like shit like this happens. So he was still pronouncing it Coruscant, and George and other people were just bitching at him like, no, it's not Coruscant, you little shit. It's Coruscant. Or the fact that like Jake Lloyd being like, you know, a 10-year-old, a child. He's playing with sand because he's on set for like 8 fucking hours and he's bored out of his mind. Plus, he's a little kid, so he's playing with sand while he's still dressed as Anakin. And if I remember correctly, one of the stagehands or the costume designer or somebody on set was bitching that he was playing with sand and he was going to ruin his costume. Like really sad. I feel really bad for Jake Lloyd. Plus, with the fact of how like he's gotten responses, like the reaction he's gotten from the community, just real bad. I feel bad for Jake Lloyd. Jake Lloyd did nothing wrong. But going back to the whole Channel Awesome controversy, uh, yeah, I feel like this is the death knell for Channel Awesome. I honestly feel that. Queen, it's not a risky title. It's a slogan for wagon wheels from the 1950s. And if I remember correctly, wagon wheels were sold in your country or still are. They're like your biscuit your they're biscuits. Where's my cap? There we go. But yeah. Well, yeah, wagon wheels are disgusting. Like they're British biscuits. Nobody likes British biscuits. Like come to America where you can have a chip of diabetes, a little disc of heart attack and high cholesterol. But yeah, just I feel like it's the death knell for Channel Awesome. Uh, Practically the old guard is gone. If I remember correctly, Todd in the Shadows isn't on there anymore. Nostalgia Chick's been gone for a while. Spoonie hasn't been on there for a long time since To Boldly Flee. Uh, Drew Wario, rest his soul. Uh, he's been gone since he passed away. Uh, I think Bennett might be one of the few old guard members that might still be on the site. Even though I watch him on YouTube. He also, if I remember correctly, has a Patreon. Linkara just left. Obscurus Loop has been gone for a while. Mars Girl's been gone or just left. Like whole shitload of people that used to be on that site are completely gone. Christ, To Boldly Flee was last anniversary movie. I don't even think I believe they stated that it would be the last anniversary film they'd be doing because it was just the budget was just too big. Plus, like while the crossover concept is a nice thing to do for the anniversary, it's just time consuming. It's time consuming and it didn't really do much for the other creators. It was more a way of, again, building up the nostalgia critic. If I remember correctly, like Kick-Assia's plot is the nostalgia critic wants to take over that little fucking quote unquote country in Utah or Nevada or wherever, with a dude that lives with his family in his own country because technically he's not in the U.S. borders. Second movie, Suburban Nights. Nostalgia critic finds some kind of treasure or whatnot, and he tricks everyone into helping him. To Boldly Flee, same thing. Nostalgia critic's the main focal point, and it ends with him dying. It's all about the nostalgia critic, with help, with cameos and help from the B list crew. It's just, it's awful, and I feel bad for the people that got stuck in that kind of shitty situation and those shitty conditions. I also feel really bad. Well, I shouldn't really feel bad for Spoonie. Like, s- uh, yeah, the expendable nostalgics. That'd actually be a really good band name. But like, I don't know. Like, Nostalgia Critic has had a good run financially. Like, he was in the limelight for a while. He kind of became irrelevant near the end. He killed his character off, uh, and then he brought him back and got more views and got his viewers back. Lankara has stayed consistent with his content. He fulfilled his movie idea with his Patreon supporters. He's done everything he possibly can to appease and appeal his audience with his Patreon obligations, which kudos to him. Nostalgia Chick, I think she's still doing stuff. Um, don't know what the fuck Todd in the Shadows is doing. I don't know what the majority of I don't know what the majority of the other fucking contributors are doing or creators are doing. Bennett's still doing his anime abandoned videos, and I'm proud that he achieved his goal of losing weight. That was a really touching video he did. Um, Spoonie, on the other hand, whew, that's a fucking can of worms right there. Like, he had a really loyal fan base, and he just blew that fucking burn. He didn't burn that bridge. He blew it up. He blew it up, burnt the remains, then salted the earth so that there was no loyalty. Like, he was making 5 grand a month or more on his Patreon, and I remember him uploading like his Patreon thing where he's like, "Thanks everybody for supporting me. I can't believe I got to the Patreon goal that I set for making a movie. Uh, it's probably not going to be a Spoonie movie. I don't know what it's going to be, but I'm going to start working on it, and that means my content's going to go down because I'm going to be so focused on it." And then it's like Spoonie has never had a consistent schedule. Like, there's been times where he's not done Rebuary until March, April, or May. Like, I remember that one. Um, I think it was 2 years ago. He only did one Rebuary movie, and that was it. And he's just devolved into just doing live streams of Let's Plays where he'll just ban you if you piss him off. Uh, yeah, just and now he's down to like 400 something dollars on Patreon. It's bad. He doesn't make any real content anymore. He just he's let himself go. Like he is an internet has been, and I hate saying that about the man because he had some incredibly classic stories that he talked about. He had some incredible content, like his SWAT 4 playthrough is still classic. A lot of his game reviews, his Highlander Jaguar uh, let's play slash review was hilarious. Just bad. Dan, you are not as bad as Spoony. You're not. Like you are far more like if you upload a video in 1 month, you're like I'm more consistent than Spoony for content. And Christ, I didn't fucking do uh oh fuck yeah, I didn't do podcasts. I didn't do like hangouts like this for a long time, and I'm more consistent. Like he'd post one video and then there'd be like a 6, 7 month drought, it felt like, before he released another video. It was awful. It's awful. Like I think the only thing he does now is wrestle when he talks about wrestling stuff. It's just sad. It's real bad. Like exactly. Only five ever. It's insane. It's insane how bad he was. All of us, all of us who do videos or stream are more consistent than him. Okay, I'll reel that back. I'll reel that back a little bit. He may be consistent when it comes to live streaming, but if I remember correctly, he doesn't alert anybody that he's live streaming. And there's one clip that I saw in one of the retrospectives where he's bragging about how he has like 520 viewers on live. I think it's Livewire or Twitch, and he's like, "Oh yeah, what the fuck you talk about? I got 520. Like, you think my fan base is dead? I got 520 viewers. How many do you get during a live stream?" And it's like I think he has like 10,000 followers on that live streaming service. 10,000. Like he has an insane amount of subscribers on that, and he can only rack up of like 520 viewers. That's like some people on like some YouTubers on this website can have like, I don't know, like 4 or 5 million subscribers, and they're only raking in like 250 to 300,000 viewers. Like, yeah, that's a lot of views for a video for like some like a guppy like me. Like, Christ, I'm still shocked that one of my videos has almost 30,000, almost to 30,000, or a little over 30,000 views on it on one video, and I've got like like almost 200 subscribers. That's insane. But if I had 7 to 8 million subscribers and I'm only raking in like a quarter million views for every video, there's something probably wrong with my base. There's something probably definitely wrong. It's just bad. Plus, you do good Twitch streams, so you should be glad, and you shouldn't be surprised you have 100 followers because you're that good, Sten. Cheers. Christ, it's been a long time since I've drank. Actually, I think the last time I drank was New Year's, New Year's Eve. I'm not drinking now, by the way. It's just thinking about it because I said cheers. Just like wow, I'm surprised I haven't drank in a while. Let's see. Yep, he twitches. He does randomizers, and he just plays games. Ugh. Let's see. Oh, boring topic for Sten probably. Uh, Stellaris. Yeah, you can drop whatever link you want to, Sten. You're mod. You have mod powers. Hang on, I gotta drop some dank ass memes. Okay. So Stellaris. Where to begin with Stellaris? Um, it's kind of a clusterfuck now. It's kind of a clusterfuck. Uh, it's more complicated in some regards. Uh, I don't think so. Saying I'm still alive. Yes, you can drop the link. You're a mod. Uh, where is that meme? There we go. Good old Ryan Gosling. That weird wooden actor. But yeah, so Stellaris is kind of getting complicated in the wrong sense. They're attempting now to add political intrigue on or political aspects to the game, which are the claim system. You need to have a claim. You need to have yes, Ryan Gosling, aka Wooden Actor, number 3411. But so in the game before 2.0, which is the Apocalypse update and expansion, uh, if you wanted to declare war to some, why was the message retracted? That wasn't me. If that message just disappeared, that wasn't me. But hang on. So I don't even see it highlighting. But yeah. So before merry old 2.0, if you wanted to declare war to somebody, you just declared war. That's it. And then you choose your war goals, which was like cleanse this planet, but take this planet, or have them cede this sector of their empire so it becomes autonomous. Liberate this world that you're allied to, that's like a vassal to them or a subordinate, and that's it. Like that's all it was. It was pretty generic and pretty simplified, but it worked. Now, now you have to choose claims. So there's hyperlanes. It's because there used to be three types of transport of mode of transportation. You had uh, baby's first warp drive, which is basically there's no hyperlanes and you just jump from star to star system as far as your warp drive would take you. Then you had hyperlanes, which is kind of like Star Wars' hyperdrive, and in essence, 40K kind of where there's lanes between star systems. There's a white line, and if you want to go from this, so if you're in your home system and you have six different hyperlanes away from it, that means you can go six different directions. And so you wherever you could jump is where you could jump. You couldn't jump over or skip over hyperlanes until you got jump drives, which everybody could get. See you, Dan. And then the advanced players version of transportation are wormholes, wormhole gates, or jump gates. I never really played around with those, but in essence, you built wormhole tunnels from one point to another point, and you could fast travel that way. But if I remember correctly, it was like warp drive or hyperdrives, but just slower, and you just had the alternative of just making these warp gates. Eh, I played online with a bunch of people in the multiplayer servers. I never saw anybody use wormhole tunnels, and the few times I did, I would like if we were at war with each other, or if I fought against an AI race that had that transportation method, and I saw them building a warp gate next to my systems, I would just send in a small naval fleet to wipe them out. And they're like they were really expensive and stuff. So now, give me a second. So now it's just hyperlanes, and I think that's best. I think that's the best way to do it. Why? Because you get choke points, which is something I would always talk about with friends while I was playing it and while I was commenting. Because I'd be like, "Hey, uh, you know, like it kind of sucks that strategically you can't choke off an enemy in this game, transportation wise. There's no choke points. Like if you're facing off against a hyperlane user and you yourself are a hyperlane user, makes sense. Makes total sense. Because if you have one lane between your empires and and you've fortified that one point in the hyperlane, you've effectively choked them off. You now have like a fort, a fortress system. Nothing's going to go in or out of that battle cluster, and you can just plop a fleet right there and just hold it. You could hold the line. But if you're fighting against a warp, like, and then say it's like 100 years in, you you haven't been really getting into wars with anybody, and you've come across two alien like races or empires, and one of them does not really like you, and you don't know their method of transportation. And so you're building up your strategy. You have hyperlanes. So you're like, okay, well, there's these two choke points between me and them. If I build my fortresses here and there, I can hold these lines, and if they punch through, then I have these two lanes or four lanes I have to hold. So you build a strategy to blockade them and impede their movement into your borders while they try to take your planets, because that was the main goal of wars before 2.0, was to take planets. That was it. Because if you took planets, it would lower their sphere of influence, because planets were where your sphere of influence was coming from. In 2.0 and later, because they just updated it again with a patch, that's no longer the case. If you have planet, it doesn't really do much territory wise. I mean, granted, you now have another colony, but that's about it. No, what you have to do is you now have to systematically build a star base outpost in each system you've explored that you want to take. One, that costs influence, and influence takes a while to make or get, depending on your empire and whatnot, and events. There's certain events when you'll just get one like, oh, we saw a comet. It's a fortuitous moment or omen, and you'll get like 40 to 50 influence. Okay, but when it costs you when it's costing me 48 influence to build one outpost near my borders, and the max you can have for influence is 1,000, kind of whittles it down a lot. Especially when they've removed planetary edicts and they've now made a lot of them imperial edicts, which cost influence points. Still, like influence points were a thing for planetary edicts, and it was for people that had a massive bulk of influence that they didn't need to use. So yeah, kind of becomes a pain in the ass. So now how do wars work, you might ask? What's with these claims that you've brought up before? So the claims are just that. Your claims on systems, not planets, systems. Like a colonized planet might be in that system, but it's a system. So you'll now have to pick like 30 fucking systems individually. And you need to have a reason to go to war now. You need to have reasons to do certain actions. And it's a pain in the ass. Uh, yeah, I'm running out of the memes. Uh, Give me un momento. There we go. But yeah, it's just a real big pain in the ass now. Also, they've now released in the new patch fucking maintenance costs now for your outposts. Uh, there's also a classification between outpost and star bases. Star bases are outposts that you build up, and you have a amount, like a cap, to star bases. Uh, but that's the problem, Sten. When Stellaris came out with Apocalypse, and I started playing it at first, I liked it. I have yet to get to make a Colossus, which is basically a weapon of mass destruction. It's the Death Star. you can crack planets. You can, I think, assimilate planets into with like a mind virus or something that makes them turn to your side or whatever. There's like certain things you can your world breakers or world eaters. It's not as good. It's not as good though as the modded version of Stellaris, which has various weapons of mass destruction. You have fleet killers, which are just giant super weapons that you've built solely to wipe out whole fleets. That's badass. That's interesting. That's strategic. Like, say, I don't know, say my fleet has a fleet strength of 40K, and I'm going up against a fleet that size, and I have this fleet destroyer in my fleet. Give me a second. Goddamn phone. But yeah. So say I have one of these fleet destroyers. I can send it in with my fleet. My fleet can defend it and hold the line while this weapon charges up and then immediately just like fires a beam that'll cut that fleet in half. Kind of like what happens in The Last Jedi. Um, you have Death Star weapons, which are basically they'll go to a planet and then completely make it barren or destroy it outright and planet crack it. You have virus bombs like 40K, where you can drop a mutagenic virus that turns the populace of that planet into xenomorphic monsters. Uh, Nanomachine virus, which you can drop down, which will just completely devour and leave the entire planet barren of or devoid of life, but leave the buildings that were built on it intact, so you could just immediately colonize it when you take it. Um, you have the Sun Crusher, not like the Star Wars version, well, kind of like the Star Wars version one, which is a little construction ship that you've built that will withstand the gravitational forces and the sheer intense heat of a star, and you can go into the star of a populated system and either make it go supernova. Actually, I believe that's all you can do is make it go supernova or collapse it. And if it goes supernova, it completely turns every planet barren. Or if it goes or if you collapse it, it again makes everything barren, but it turns into a black hole. Like there's multiple things. There's also you have to pick an edict. You have to pick an edict that means you are willing to build death weapons. And then you need to use influence to maintain that weapon. And it's an insane amount of influence cost to keep that weapon running because you need the influence of having your people okay with having that death weapon. If you have a death weapon or you're pro death weapon construction, other empires won't like you because you're saying yes, I am totally willing to build virus bombs that will turn you into biomass, and they will not like that. And if you build biomass virus bombs, they're not going to be too happy with you. uh, a lot of mods play off of this mod, which is the Star Wars mod. It will turn the Avatar death weapon, which is basically the Death Star, into looking like the Death Star, which is cool. But like the weapons in Apocalypse are not as cool. The Titans are meh. I was able to build 2 Titans. They are insanely expensive and they don't have modules. They only have 3 for the front, middle, and rear sections. That's it. Like they don't have like you can't customize it. Like, if you want to build a cruiser, you have multiple modules. You can have the front be an art. You have artillery modules for front, middle, the front, mid, and rear sections of the ship. You can have a torpedo section in the front and middle, and then you can have a broadside. I think it's broadside or artillery for the rear. Battleships have the same things. You can put a carrier in the front to have fighter jets and bombers come out of it, and then have the midsection have fighters and bombers. All kinds of things. Titans can't. Titans are just giant mobile weapon platforms, and they have buffs, which battleships used to have in an earlier version of the game, but they removed them. So it's just kind of meh. Like it's there's so many things that could be good with this game, but they're just like star bases were a neat concept where like you could have fortresses with certain things, like they could build ships and stuff. eh, I'm not really liking it. I like the old school, like you have a planet and then you have a planetary space station and you could customize the station and it could build ships. Now planets can only build three things. Uh, Construction ships, science ships, and colony ships. Star bases are where you build your military fleet. Uh, that's all fine and dandy, but they sit in the middle of the system. They don't sit next to your planet. You can't build. You can build in the before 2.0. You had three different stations. You had defense platforms. Uh, well, there are three defense platforms, but I believe it went defense platform was the smallest. Defense station was the mid tier, and then you had a fortress, and the fortress was the big all be all end all massive fucking weapons platform. You could have eight large type weapons on it, or you could have a multitude of medium sized or small sized with point defense, or you could have hangars, all kinds of shit. Now you only get one defense platform and you can build a set amount for star bases depending on your research, what you put as a module on a star base, and ascension tradition perks. Ugh, it's kind of like borders are more, they're not globs per se. Like usually your sphere of influence slash borders would just be a giant sphere depending on what you were. Like the best way to know that a fallen empire was next to you is it a perfect circle? If so, it's probably a fallen empire. Um, they were basically just just circles upon circles. Like if you had three planets away, like close to each other but not right on top of each other, you'd have three circles bunched up like a snowman. Um, Now it's just weirdly shaped borders because every single star system has its own set sphere of influence when you take it. Looks like some of my empire's borders look like somebody took bites out of it. Give me one moment. Uh, what's another thing I can complain about when it comes to Stellaris? I think that's it, really. Yeah. Uh, after a while of playing it, I just kind of lost interest with it because of not just the sheer amount of changes, but the sheer lack of really interesting changes. Like before, it was kind of tedious just waiting for like your science ships to survey, which is probably the most mind-numbing thing early game. Like the first 20 years, as your ships are just surveying across the galaxy and waiting. Like, oh hey, this is close to my border, so I can take that. And oh, there's a planet I can take. I'll colonize that, and then I can start building all these things I found. Now you have you have fucking you have a line of sight on a hyperlane. And so if you see your hyperlane and only like three-quarters of it is lit up, that means that's as far as your ship can see. And the farther you go in the observation tier of research it's the sensors research, but it's observation stuff. The farther you go, the farther your line of sight. That can become a pain in the dick, real bad. Like it is really bad. Uh, there's been so many times where I've actually researched all of it. I'm like 130 years into the game, and I've got like a quarter to maybe a third of the galaxy surveyed, and I'm getting 6 star lanes ahead of myself because of my line of sight, and I'm like, "Oh, you've encountered this alien race and this and that," and it's like, I don't I I don't wanna see 6 fucking star systems away from me, please. I'm more focused on, like, consolidating my sphere of influence and, like, doing that. I'm not focused on that far into the future for exploring. Like, there's been times where I've been at the tip of one of the spiral arms of a galaxy, and there's one hyperlane that goes across the vastness of space and reaches like the elbow of another arm, and my line of sight has gone all the way that way into two other systems there, and I've noticed something else, and it's like, no, I don't care what's on the other fucking arm that's like so far away from me, it's not going to matter. I want to just focus on this. Please stop doing this to me, Stellaris. I don't like that I can't customize my ships, like construction and science ships and colony ships. Like they all immediately get updated. Like if you get a new engine research that month, damn right, all your ships will all of your civilian ships get updated immediately. They get the best armor. They get the best shields. They get the best engines and observation stuff. Everything. You can't name them though, which is probably the biggest thing that irks me about it. I'd be fine with all of that. Let me name the goddamn things. I don't want like I don't want the audacity class when I'm naming things after 40k ships. Usually my science ship I name the Cryptus class because if I remember correctly, Cryptus is is a research outpost or like a lot of science developments there. Or maybe I want to name it a Mars class science ship because Mars is a massive forge world in the Imperium of Man. Like if I'm doing my Star Trek, my Federation of Planets from Star Trek, I want to name it something. Exactly. Like you could have like the Kobayashi Maru class ship, and it's like, well, that's I'm stuck with the fucking Kobayashi Maru class science ships, and all of them are that. Like they're all that class of ship, and then they all have generic fucking like uh randomly generated names from the type of name class that you picked. Like there's like 4 mammalian, like 3 humanoids, and so on and so forth. Like each generic species slash race section has their own types of names. Can't name my fucking civilian ships or the class. I can't modify or customize those ships. Maybe I don't want to spend like the cost of putting shields on my ships. Maybe I just want full on armor on all my ships, and I just want to say fuck shields. Maybe I just want to do that. Can't do that with civilian ships though. Like, yeah, yeah, I hate it. Like, I just like kinetic and missile weapons. I don't like laser weapons. I don't like disruptors, and I don't like disruptors and ion cannons. I don't. When I'm playing the Imperium of Man, I don't. But when I'm playing the Federation, I'm all about that laser weaponry. If I'm playing Star Wars, all about that laser weaponry and torpedoes. Missiles are now their own thing. So if I make a torpedo boat, if I have a torpedo that's considered quote unquote obsolete compared to normal missiles, it'll swap out my missiles. It'll swap it for missiles instead of torpedoes. On a torpedo boat, you have a torpedo module for cruisers. It won't pick torpedoes, it'll pick missiles. Then why the fuck do you call it a torpedo module? Like if I have a neutron torpedo, which is vastly superior to like tier 5 missiles, why are the tier 5 missiles overcoming the neutron torpedo, which is supposed to be the best uh, missile missile weapon in the game? Um, Fighters and bombers, it's been a gripe with me for a long time. Like it's not just the Apocalypse update. Fighters and bombers. If you have bombers are superior to fighters, even tier 3, like even the highest tier of uh, fighter craft or strike craft you have, bombers will always be picked automatically. You have to manually put them in. I kind of wish fighters were more like I kind of wish fighters and bombers were put onto your module when you autoed it in. Like they need to make like the strike craft more accessible and more of a strategic thing. Like I wish fighter like when you go into a fight, 9 times out of 10, you will find like if you're playing against somebody or if you're playing against the AI, 9 times out of 10 they will not have strike craft on their fucking ships. Nobody really uses the carrier modules for their cruisers and battleships. They're kind of fucking pointless because your bombers and your strike craft as soon as you enter a system that's occupied by an enemy fleet, the strike craft will have to fly from the edge of that solar system and fly directly to the enemy. And usually the enemy will have point defense and flak batteries to combat these said fucking strike craft. And usually your strike craft will just get blown out of the sky. Not all the time, but most of the time. And strike craft and bombers don't really do that much. Like the main damage output is just mount as many big guns as you possibly can on your ships and fire at will. It's lame. Uh oh, another thing I could probably bitch about. Needs more strategic combat. I would like to be able to control how my fleet operates. I'd like to have formations other than this fleet will follow this fleet into combat. This fleet will be the first to combat. This pl- like This fleet, if it's low on HP, will go to the back of said like attack fleet. Like, give me options that are in most real-time strategy games where it's like break them off into a flanking formation. So I can have two like my main fleet will branch off into two smaller sections so they can wrap around. Like I'd like ambushes. That'd be a neat thing because they've introduced that with the whole line of sight uh nebulas. You can't see into a nebula. You have to actively jump into into a system that's in a nebula to see what's going on in said nebula or just that system within it. Uh, Introduce ambush tactics. Jump drives have been completely nerfed to the point where you actively have to choose to jump from one hyperlane system across a certain point and bypass a bunch of jumps. But it completely I think it halves your weapon output damage and slows your fleet down, and you have like 120 days to have that debuff cooldown. Give me some fucking like give me some other things. Like give me ambush tactics, give me like I don't know, minefields. Like like you can't put minefields down anymore. That was something that was in pre 2.0 where you could put minefields as a special module for your defense platforms. Can't do that now. I haven't seen anything like that. Pretty much, I would say this because you asked. No, yeah, you would ask then, is it even worth the money now? I would say yes and no. Yes, if you have people that have the game that you're friends with that you can play with, because then you can all just role play and have like this really wacky, insane session of beating the snot out of each other or tag teaming an alien AI empire. But if you're playing by yourself, it's just ugh, it's just bad. It's really mind-numbingly boring. Like I think it was December or November. It was somewhere. It was uh, well, it wasn't too long ago. I was playing Stellaris. I think it was back in October, November, fall or winter of 2017. I was playing Stellaris. I remember showing you in screen caps and telling you what was going on, play by play, every so often. That was fine. Uh, Even though like the first 65 years of the game, which was like 3 hours of playtime because I was pausing and min maxing and pausing and surveying things and pausing and plotting stuff or pausing and doing something else because I had stuff to do in the real world. But like took me like 3 4 hours to do 65 years and not a goddamn thing happened other than me colonizing like 6 7 planets and surveying and building frontier station another thing, you can't build frontier stations anymore, but building frontier stations and sitting there and waiting, watching paint fucking dry until one of my construction ships had finished doing something, or waiting for my fleets to slowly move from system to system to take care of a pirate incursion or a void cloud incursion or fucking mining drones were blocking one of my science ships from surveying further into an area that I had cut off from the rest of the empires that I had encountered, or I wanted like it was just like two more star systems on the edge of the galaxy that I hadn't explored, but I was going to be able to take because of my sphere of influence, and there'd be a fucking ancient mining drone thing. So I have to sit there and wait while my fleets are being built up that are close enough to take out this threat, or I would have to send in a fleet that was like 30 systems away because that was the nearest outpost or base or station that could build or had a fleet available. And so I'd have to sit there and wait while this fucking fleet's moving. And the game slowly, I'd say mid game, which is around 100 years in, that's when the game starts to get really fast paced and interesting in a single player sense and just in general, because that's when you're starting to encounter more alien races. You're trying to build alliances. You're trying to fight others. You're trying to push faster and move more supplies, and you're starting to get more income than you can possibly spend. And so you're sending out a dozen fucking science ships to map out the stars as fast as you can so you can colonize as quickly. And then mid game, late mid game is when you've started to figure out where everybody is on the map. And then late game is basically uh late game can play out two ways from what I've seen: stagnation and grim dark. In the future there is only war. That's the only two ways I've seen the game play out. uh and it's not just because, like, oh, Darth, you play 40k most of the, you play like a 40k space marine slash imperial most of your playthroughs. It happens in my 40k playthroughs too. Same with Star Trek. Like, Star Trek is not all goody two shoes. They can be quite nefarious and evil. But in the stagnation playthroughs for late game, every empire has taken hold of as far as many systems as they can hold, and that's it. Borders are drawn up. Everybody has, like, the whole galaxy has been taken by every single faction. Like, all of the factions have spread out and they've all have their borders, and now all they're doing is just flying around with their military fleets, jumping from system to system, doing patrols or some shit I don't even fucking know. And that becomes your point of trying to buy out systems or make alliances and trying to fuck people over, and there'll probably be a few minor wars here and there, and that's it. That is mind-numbingly bad, because probably the only thing that'll probably break that stagnation is go falling into path number B, which is in the grim dark future of the 40th millennium, there is only war, or a fucking crisis happens, like the AI uprising before it was changed in uh oh god, I forgot the name of it. Synthetic Dawn. That's it. Synthetic Dawn changed the AI uprising kind of to the contingency. The Pretheran Swarm, which is basically the Zerg slash Tyranids coming in and invading the galaxy. The Unbidden finally breaking through from their dimension, from jump drives being used in real space. That's about it. Or the Shroud. That's kind of not a crisis, but it's considered a crisis, kind of. It's weird with the way they scripted the Shroud. Um, but that's about it. Like, it's either a crisis event's going to change, stir up shake up the status quo, or some faction's going to try and vie for something. Uh, and then they also added, I think it's in Synthetic Dawn, War in Heaven, which is a total ripoff of what happened in 40k. Uh, Ancient fallen empires will awaken and they will begin to amass their armies again and try and reclaim their former imperial standings and territories. And so you can have like three ancient fallen empires fighting amongst each other and wiping you out, declaring war on you, allying with you, so on and so forth. And those are like the biggest be all end all wars, because their fleets are far superior to most, unless like it's been so stagnant for so long before they woke up that like several empires are on par with them, especially if you've taken some of the ascension perks to fight against them. But I think the more interesting one is in the grim dark future, there is only war. I think that's the more fun aspect where borders have been drawn and everything has been claimed, and now it's time to just slowly start having wars with each other. And and it's probably late game that I think militarists and xenophobes have the best influence gain, especially with how factions are now a thing. Because one, your militarists will be incredibly happy with multiple wars and multiple rivals. I believe xenophobes will have a boon from being having rivalries, along with purging and conquering alien races because you're superior. Uh, and yeah, like you will get an insane. Like I've gotten, I think, 12 influence a month or more sometimes with the amount of wars I've had with other factions. I think one of the largest wars I've ever played in was I was fighting against 22 alien races. I had declared war with them on so many, and I had so many rivalries with so many of these races. I fought wars for a solid 120 years, and the vast majority of my population was militarist and xenophobe, and spiritualists were like at 15% of my pop. Like 15% of my population were spiritualist leaning, and like I think it was like 65% were militarist and 30% were xenophobe. Or it might have been more equal between those factions, like 45% xenophobe and militarist, and then 10% spiritualist, or like 8% spiritualist and a few percentage points for like a few others, like materialist or authoritarian. Like, and I was getting a shit ton of fucking influence from those two factions within my government and empire, and I was just smashing through. I didn't take all of my war goals because I was just like, "Yep, I just want to have constant war. I want to take these planets and I want to take those planets and just hold them so there's just nothing but war." And sometimes I'd be like, okay, I want to take these planets, and then and probably one of the biggest things I hate about Stellaris is like the 10-year ceasefire. So you have to wait 10 fucking years before you can wipe out like a system. Because apparently Paradox is like, nah, we can't have total war in our war game, our war strategy 4X game. Can't have total war. You can't totally wipe out a civilization in one fucking go. Like there's been times in Stellaris where I have had the superiority in numbers, in and I'm talking numbers in ships, fleet power, infantry. I had boots on the ground, 10 to 1 in most odds. Like I would send and this is actually a more recent game. Uh they've introduced combat width for a planet. So if the combat width is 8, only 8 of your invading troops will be fighting. So if you send in 10, 2 will be waiting until 2 of your others get wiped out. I was sending in hundreds hundreds of assault armies because the Imperial Guard is nothing but just a meat grinder for a career in 40K. I'd send like 50 Imperial Guard regiments to one planet with a combat width of 8, and I'd just be like, fuck them. Like they can die as many as they want. I don't give a fuck. And I'd send them in, and they'd barely be fucking like. It even tell me like you're probably gonna lose this battle on this planet if you keep sending these men in. Do you want to stop? Nah, send another 50 in. I've got like I don't know. I've got like 60 worlds under my belt right now that are in my empire, and they're all building like 10 armies a pop. So that's 600 infantry, and the amount of infantry losses I'm getting on this planet are slow. Like I for every one infantry I'm losing on this on in this campaign, I'm building 10 more in a month, and I'm losing one in a month. So like I'm losing one, but I'm gaining nine more that I can just fresh 9 fresh regiments I can send in to replace that one I just lost. Nah, I'll keep fighting. I'll whittle down the enemy, and I just keep sending them into the through the meat grinder. Like that's probably one of the more lulzy things I can do in the game that I enjoy. But like, eh, it'd be better if I had fucking like I'd have more fun with friends than by myself in this game. I'm also not a fan of the naval fleet capacities. I feel like some of them are a little too low, especially mid game to early late game. I think it was 200 like 215 to around 220 years into the game. I had a fleet capacity per fleet of 200. So a battleship is a pop of 8 in a navy. So if I built 5, I'd have 40, which means 160 is left. It's 4 for a cruiser, and cruisers in mid game, late mid game, early late game are basically your main workhorse, your main force in your fleets. You want a lot of cruisers. Destroyers become more picket ships to take out fleets and missiles and stuff, and then your frigates are just cannon fodder. So you're going to want a lot of cannon fodder, but you're also going to want a fair amount of destroyers and cruisers in your fleet. Um, it kind of really cripples fleets in a sense. Granted, fleets were broken before 2.0 because you could just have one massive cap. Like if you had a 1300 in fleet capacity, you could build a fleet that has 1300 for pop, and you just send in this one fleet. Stupid to fucking do. It'd be incredibly stupid to do because you've got this one fleet just floating around, especially if you have a massive empire. But you could just sledgehammer your way through fleets like it was nothing. You could have a fleet of 500 and a fleet of 500 and then a fleet of 300. So you'd have two massive battle fleets pushing through, and then you'd have this 300 one just float piddling about in your empire. But now, like not on top of having naval capacities for your fleets, you also have just a naval capacity still. So if you have a fleet capacity of 100 and then you have a naval capacity of 200, you can only build two fleets with 100 each. That's it. Like you can't build one that's 150 and 150. Well, one is 150 and the other one is just 50. It probably will be forever broken in a sense unless Paradox kind of realizes that they're not doing a medieval slash Renaissance game or a 1940s war game because they do Hearts of Iron, they do Universalis or Europa Universalis, and they do Crusader Kings. All fairly decent games, especially Hearts of Iron. Those have historical backgrounds, though. Those make more sense. Like the logistics of having massive armies on the scale of what a lot of people would be like, I want 1,000,000 men in one regiment. It'd be like, no, that's a logistical nightmare, and that's not how it happened in that time. It's more historically focused. Makes sense. The problem with Stellaris, though, is you're talking like you can become a galactic empire that controls 3/4 of the galaxy, and you're being told, well, you can't have Like you own three-quarters of the galaxy. You're producing thousands of minerals and thousands of energy and thousands of food per month to the point that you are constantly capped at your mineral capacity, like your mineral energy and food capacity, but you are limited to having like 1,000 ships. That's it. You have three-quarters of the galaxy, and there's like two empires left that are like ants to your technological powers and prowess. You have researched every feasible technology, and you are now repeating certain things, finally improving. Like you're now up to 65% efficiency of shields. So your shield hit points now have 65% more than base if you had just researched that top tier of shields. Yours are 65% better than if the one of these two empires just researched what you have. Like, but you only have 1,000 ships at your command. Cause reasons. It's like, wait, what? Fucking Galactic Empire has more fucking ships than that in Star Wars. They don't even control all of the Star Wars galaxy. They don't. You have the unknown regions, which is like a one-third of the galaxy of the Star Wars galaxy. Hut space is its own neutral zone, which is a big chunk of space. The outer rim isn't really controlled by the Empire, save for a few bastion out, like few lonely outposts here and there for trafficking reasons and smuggling reasons. Like the Imperium of Man, Dune, Star Trek. Star Trek of all fucking things. The least militarized, well, actually, it's oxymoronic because Starfleet is really militarized, but the quote unquote least militarized, like, faction in fucking Star Trek has vastly more ships. Christ, in Star Trek, they're fighting over a quadrant of the galaxy. A quadrant. Alpha quadrant, in fact. They don't even control all of Alpha Quadrant, and they have more ships than a Stellaris fucking galactic empire that has three-quarters of the galaxy. More like two. Yeah. Like, I don't know. I think the largest naval capacity I think the largest naval capacity I've ever reached in Stellaris was 2,200. I think 2,200 was the high, like around 2,200, like 2,200 and some change. That was the most I've ever gotten in Stellaris for a naval capacity, and that's from terraforming planets, which takes forever to do. Takes fucking forever to do. To terraform. Uh, but fucking terraforming planets, colonizing planet after planet, like try and take every planet like that I could feasibly take. Also, welcome back, Queen. Um, whole fucking parts of the galaxy so that I don't deal with the over pop cap of systems. Like min maxing my way through it so I can get the most in my naval fleet, and the most I can probably feasibly get is 2,200. And that's the other thing. 2,200 and some change sounds like a lot for a naval capacity, but you got to think. Actually, hang on. I will do the math. Mm, okay. We'll pick a number. We'll pick a random number. 2,238. We'll say I had 2,238 for a naval capacity. We'll divide that by 8. because I have battleships. Say I want to build nothing but battleships. I would be able to. I would just shy 279.75, meaning I would if I had 2240 for a naval cap, I'd be able to build 280 battleships, and that's all I could command. If I built nothing but battleships, I could have 2238 frigates or corvettes. I could have 1100 and uh 1119 destroyers. I could have uh I'd need I think two more. I think I'd need two more. I'd need 2240 to get 560 cruisers, but I'd still be at like 279 to 280 battleships. But I have three-quarters of the galaxy under my control, and I have like 90 planets to 100 planets under my control with like over 1,000 to 2,000 like population wise for people. Like, no, I'm just gonna have this very small amount of ships. Like that's the like I think that's the problem Stellaris is having. And I get it. Balance. You need balance. You can't just constantly build up fleets and what like the logistical issues of it would be like, oh, this one empire has more technology than like two other players, and they built like a fleet of 6,000 frigates and wiped out one where they can only build like 200. I understand that. Like you need a pop limit or a limit capacity. At the same time, though, once late game starts coming in, like fleet capacity should start getting more massive. You're a galaxy spanning empire. It needs to get like fleets needs to start exponentially getting bigger. I don't know. It's weird. I don't think I'll ever get over that with the with that kind of shit. Well, so here's the thing, Sten. You could feasibly have a higher cap. It's going to take you decades to research though. And I mean decades. Once you've researched every feasible cap increase on the normal tier, you get you get ones that they're called repeatables because once you've researched everything, they start just introducing repeatables. So weapons, it's always an increment of 5%, but the time to research it gets longer and longer and longer. So once you're at like 65%, it's taking you like 400 some odd months. Yes, I'm still talking sadly about Stellaris because it's just one of those games that I like to rant about. But so like say you're at 65% for shields and you want to research 70%. So another 5%, so you'll have 70%. It's going to take you like 298 months to research that. You could do the same thing when it comes to capacity for naval capacity and fleet capacity. Naval capacity, I think, reaches 10%. No, a plus 10 or a plus 20. And fleet capacity is a plus 10 to a plus 15. I forget which numbers they are, but they're really fucking small increments. And they follow the same thing. So, yeah, I just researched like plus 200 to my naval capacity. Now I got to wait another 190 months to research this. And you could max out, you could have a research station, which is, or the science nexus is the mega structure that gives you like plus 250 to all sciences to all your science researches per fucking well, when you max it out. Like when you max out your science nexus, it'll churn out plus 250 physics, society, and engineering research. And research is point based. So have like I don't know, you're bringing in at one point in one of my games, I was bringing in 1.7 or 1.8 engineering, so 1800 research and engineering. That was speeding up my engineering technology that I was researching, which is mostly weapons and armor. But it's a drop in the fucking bucket when you start reaching like the millions or the hundreds of thousands. Like it's gonna take you fucking decades in game to research this plus 5% increase. Plus the other thing, which makes this even more pointless now because of 2.0, is they've changed combat. If you send in a fleet 3 times the size of the enemy fleet, the smaller fleet will have a buff, and you'll have a debuff because apparently Paradox thinks it's unfair that you sent in a fleet like you are strategically and financially superior to the enemy, and they don't like it that you're curb stomping them. Paradox doesn't like the fact that certain factions are superior in the location they're in and their fucking their management of their empires. They don't like that apparently. And they did that to make it more fair. Yes, Stan, you heard me correct. They have buffed and debuffed aggressors and defenders depending. I know that's not how war works. Like that was the first thing I saw. Uh Hang on. I'll grab it so I can read it to you because it's just fucking stupid. Okay, so first thing is Cass's belly or war goal and war goals. First things are claim, subjugation, animosity, which is to humiliate, which basically just makes you lose influence. Your ideology, uh, colossi, stop the colossus. Like, say somebody builds a colossus and you don't want them to have it, you can declare war on them just to destroy it. Uh, so on and so forth. And then your claim that there's all that. Uh, so they have war exhaustion, which is another thing. The longer a war goes, the higher your war exhaustion is, and the more penalties you get. Like, and the way defending empires can also beat you through war exhaustion just by attrition. And so war exhaustion accumulates into costs for ethics, traditions, technologies, and the amount of claims being pressed. And so if you want to take a bunch of systems, your war exhaustion will go faster. Also, wars end in two ways: surrender of either side, or with a negotiated status quo peace. Surrender is simple. You surrender to the enemy. You know that there's no other way, and it's usually like the enemy will usually surrender when like the opposing faction has nearly completely defeated them. The status quo, though, and I'll read it from the wiki, means that the war has reached a point where total victory is unlikely for either side, and both sides agree to stop hostilities and settle for whatever gains or losses they have suffered. Under a status quo peace, all fully occupied systems claimed by an enemy empire are ceded to the enemy with the strongest claim. In the case of a tie, whoever has the oldest claim on the system is considered the stronger claimant. If a total war is ended with a status quo, all empires retain all systems they fully occupied. It is stupid. It is really stupid. I don't know why. It's probably one of the biggest things I fucking hate about the warfare system in Stellaris. There's been so many times where I've been like literally pushing, like the Russians in World War II. They've been raising and capturing whole systems, and then the enemy will just keep going, oh, we surrender, and I'll just take all that stuff, and it's like, no, you motherfucker, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to take all of the systems. Okay, here it is. Here's the thing I was bringing up, Sten, that's absolutely stupid. Force disparity. Force disparity is a combat bonus applied when a smaller force is engaged with the larger one in battle and gives a bonus to the fire rate of all ships belonging to the smaller force. Force disparity scales linearly linearly with the fleet size difference. So for example, a force that is half the size of the enemy will gain a 50% bonus to its firing speed, representing the fact that the smaller force has an easier time maneuvering and targeting the larger enemy force. Force disparity will never make a smaller force win unless it has a significant technological advantage. It will, however, ensure that all but the most overwhelming forces will take casualties and bear a cost for their victory. Um, Again, you're talking about space combat. These are galactic empires. They are able to move faster than fucking light. They have weapons that fire plasma and lasers. They have death weapons that can crack planets. They are technologically superior in every fucking way. You literally research AI combat chips and AI systems for your starships to better increase your fire rate, targeting, and tracking of enemies. How is it harder for like it makes no fucking sense. That doesn't happen in the real world. It doesn't happen. Like the American Army in World War II, the US Navy was like a 10-1 to the Imperial Japanese Navy. You didn't see the Imperial Japanese have a fire rate of 50 like fire rounds from their battleships 50% faster than the fucking American ships because they were a smaller force. No, that's not how it works. If you have a large fleet in any sense, even large regiment, like large battalions and legions of troops, you train your troops to perform. Like if you have 1,000 battleships, I'm damn well sure commanders are going to be briefed as to how to maneuver alongside their 999 fucking commanders. They're not going to be like, "Oh, there's 5 battleships in front of our way. Damn, we're gonna have to not fire as effectively. Boy, we all like 900, like these 1,000 battleships can't maneuver correctly." in the vastness of fucking space, which is a three-dimensional fucking plane of existence. You can't have battleships moving up and down, left and right, like in any direction in space. No, no. It's a linear to like the fuck out of here with this kind of shit. Like that's probably one of the biggest things I hate about Solaris. Like combat another thing is combat computers that determines the behavior of a ship while in combat and you can choose how you want to. Like ignore is for a colossus and it just ignores attackers and carries on with its task. Uh, there's artillery, which they stay at long range and fire long range weapons. You have line, which is they stay in an they hold to a medium range and hold formation and fire and just bombard the fucking enemy. You can have picket ships, which will advance close range and intercept enemies, and then corvettes have the swarm ability, which is just charge straight at the enemy and try and deal as much possible damage point blank before you get blown up. So in this force disparity thing, if you have 100, I don't know, 100 cruisers against 30 corvettes, those 30 enemy corvettes, because they're a smaller fleet, they get a 50% bonus to firing speed. And what they're doing is they're charging a superior fighting force head on, point blank range. That's fucking stupid. It's absolutely stupid. That and yeah, like Paradox doesn't understand space combat. I've been seeing a lot of people in Steam threads and stuff, and on the Paradox forums themselves arguing this point. Like a lot of your quote unquote improvements and updates are not good for a space combat game or just a space strategy game. They don't make any fucking sense in the grand scheme of things. And again, fucking uh Paradox hasn't really come out and said anything from what I've seen. Just yeah, yeah, bad. Yeah. Again, that's why I want more strategy in my games. It will in the game. Like, oh hey, I have a smaller fleet than the enemy, and the enemy's pushing through my should I do? Well, there's this cool ambush mechanic in the game that will give me a buff because I've ambushed an enemy. Like maybe there's a fucking maybe there's a I don't know, maybe there's a nebula in a star system. Like or maybe I have my smaller force in a nebula. Let me like if I ambush them from coming out of the nebula since they can't see into the nebula, I get a bonus for surprising me and they're in disarray. Like do something like that or I don't know, stealth like cloaking devices would be a cool thing to add to actually do this whole force disparity thing. Like do something like that, not oh well, you have this small fleet and this small fleet is just it's small and it's inferior to the enemy fleet which is bigger and better, but we'll just buff the small. Like, I have yet to see anybody really complaining about, like, yeah, they just sent in a fleet of like 10,000 K against my fleet of 500. Like, I totally think I should be able to at least take a few of them out with me. Like, nobody's saying that. Nobody that I've seen has said, I want more. Like, I think it's unfair. It's like, no, if you know how to play the game, if you know how to build fleets and you know how to manage your way throughout the system without totally fucking yourself over and being blind to one thing, like, you'll do fine. There's been only a few times where I've actually hardcore fucked up in the game and I've been like, "Yep, well, this game's over. I've lost." And that's usually when I've had a fallen empire that's been pissed off at me right on my borders, and I've just been like, "Yep, you're not gonna do anything. I'm fine." And then they've actively just attacked me outright, declared war on me, and I'm like, "Oh fuck." And it's only been like 70 years, 80 years into the game, and there's no way I'm gonna be able, like, they're just gonna curb stomp me. I'm not pissed off that, like, they have a massive fucking fleet. I'm more pissed off at the fact that, like, well, I'm fucked. I I didn't think they'd declare war on me. And then there's some times where it's like, well, they can't, well, sometimes they won't jump into a system. They'll just declare war and just sit on it and just be like, "Oh, we're at war with you and we don't want to deal with you. We hate you, but oh, we're not going to do anything." Like, I'm fine with those kind of fucking situations because that gives me time to actually, like, start rapidly preparing if I totally didn't do anything beforehand. Nowadays, I'm like, yep, building here, building there, build up this, build up that, have a big fucking fuck off fleet here, build battle fleets everywhere. Oh, look at this chokehold point. I build castle when castles get, or you have a small castle, and it's something that has, but you'll have a small castle on like a hill with a keep, and that's where the lord and lady live. And then you have a town outside of it. Well, the town's got to get defended. Like, you're not gonna have a big fuck off village around your castle and not defend it. So you build a wall around that, and then say for whatever reason the village gets bigger because you can't expand within a set defined wall, then you build a wall around that. That's how I do it. Like, it's a series of chokeholds and like fortified positions. So even if the first layer of my defenses get pushed back, I always have something to fall back to. Like, that's something I've always like what I do in the game now is I routinely build up. What puns would that be, Queen? Have to tell me later because it's 11. It's almost 11:20, and I'm getting quite hungry. So I will talk to you all later. Uh, Try and do something Saturday. I'll try. No promises. So, good night, everybody, and thanks for coming.